Identity is a concept. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That's the end of the video. Goodbye. Identity in the modern landscape is a shifting phenomenon that is defined differently depending on who you meet. Some speculate that certain aspects of your identity cannot be changed and you just are who you are, whilst many others are breaking the boundaries of this forced by nature conformity. Whatever identity means to you, and whatever your identity is, it's something that can be very personal to many. While some might seek out ways to demonize some parts of other people's identities, bastardizing culture war against it fails to recognize how important it is for people to find oneself. Of course, as social creatures, we thrive to fit our identities into social groups, to find camaraderie in not being alone in our specific characteristics. But as we become more self-dependent as a society, we find ourselves expressing more and more about ourselves through the mere act of spite against everybody else, and against all those who try to group us all together in these little cliquey groups. We can work and function together as a community while also having a sense of self. And that sense of self shouldn't be demonized just because somebody else doesn't understand it, or because it doesn't necessarily fit another person's definition of identity. But there is breaking the conventions of a definition, and then there's making a mockery of those who are genuinely trying to make real change in how we view ourselves. And that is exactly what I want to dive into today. What really is the line between making a mockery of something or changing the way that we see the world? Hello, boys. Welcome to the Lazy Bedhead Show. Trolling is an integral part of the internet. The rabbit hole of the most notorious or notable trolls and their impacts online goes so far that an iceberg video on the subject would be the longest video on YouTube ever to be made. Trolling can be an art form when done correctly, and it can be used as a form of entertainment instead of trying to maliciously hurt people. One of my personal favorite trolls ever in online history has to be Liquid Chris from the Chris Chan saga. A man that created a sort of character to mock Chris Chan's mannerisms and personality.
Captain's log. Stardate. June 21st, 2009.
But plays an integral part in Christery as the better Chris Chan. And he's not better in the sense that he copies Chris's style and speech and appearance better, but also in his backstory. Liquid Chris was essentially a better Chris Chan, someone who was successful, who had a girlfriend, who didn't have crippling anxiety, who was famous for his Sonichu comics. Liquid Chris resembles a version of Chris Chan we all wish we had today, considering the true Chris Chan that we know of now isn't someone we can really admire or idolize or even make fun of anymore. Solid Chris, or the Chris Chan that we know in real life, has essentially been ruined by the internet. Chris could have easily handled their online notoriety differently, and the internet should definitely have treated them better. Because the version of Chris that we have now is one where they have romantic relations with their own mother. Liquid Chris is essentially the good ending that we'll never get to see. But trolls don't always get to be trolls just to get a kick out of someone. They can also send a message. The most profound attempt of trolling in the mainstream media was when Ty Beeson dressed up as Dr. Phil when he was invited on the show as a guest.
If you think I exploit people, every time you bring a guest on this show, you exploit them and spread whatever problems they have to the whole world. You think that's helping them?
Yeah, keep telling yourself that.
The reason for this was essentially to show Dr. Phil that he and himself were no different from each other. And that even though the criticism of the Bum Fight series was valid in its exploitation of the most vulnerable in society, the Dr. Phil show is essentially that, but a more glorified version of it. Dr. Phil's blueprint is to bring someone onto the show with either mental health issues or a family that has a struggling relationship and hang out their dirty laundry all on national television. Now, how would that be any different than recording the homeless in real time, exploiting their financial crisis that sends them down a downward spiral, recorded and broadcasted live for everyone to see? The simple idea of both of these shows having their own flaws in their execution, it shows that Ty Beeson wasn't willing to be talked down to by a man who essentially had the same problems but didn't have the fortitude to self-reflect. Someone who openly exploits vulnerable people live on television should probably learn to self-reflect before before throwing stones at glass houses. It's important to note that even though trolling can be profound or funny or offensively controversial at times, the best trolls on the internet with the best intentions are never meant to be taken seriously. When known online trolls are taken to a level of serious analysis, especially by mainstream media that doesn't exactly know the difference, it essentially becomes something that even the troll themselves cannot distinguish anymore from reality. And at that point, that's when you essentially start blurring the lines from trolling to grifting. Although grifters can exist outside of trolling, in fact, a lot of what we consider grifters can also phase back and forth between trolling and grifting. The trolling-grifting line of thinking is kind of like surfing between two ends of a pole. It's a spectrum, much like anything else. Grifting is a more complicated and scummy form of a troll, because it's a troll that doesn't recognize itself as a joke and genuinely tries to get people to take them seriously in order to spread a message or create mainstream attention. Again, these two things can exist separately, but it all comes down to intent and recognition of the character that they portray. Grifters don't recognize what they're doing is a mockery. They are genuine in their attempts to blend into the crowd, whilst causing a lot of trouble, without necessarily recognizing that their presence is seen as a joke to everyone that they're trying to blend into, and to convince that they are actually genuine. Today, I intend to try to take these three concepts we just talked about and see how we can approach our subject in question. Because like their many personalities that they've partaken as online, so must we analyze them from these many perspectives to understand the full scope. It's more than just this guy is confused with their own identity, or their attempt of trolling is so effective that it then turns into a grift for the sake of attention. All three of these elements work together to create the nightmare of a man that we know today as Oli London. Today, I'm about to tell you the same story in three separate ways to understand the man behind the personality. So without further ado, let's talk about identity. So, in order to understand how we got to this point, we need to establish the three principles that plague Oli London's online persona and the culture that surrounds him. His struggles with identity, his inability to work as a troll, and how this inability to distinguish his trolling from reality results in him grifting in the mainstream. Let's start with his struggles with identity. Oli London was born in England and lived in Korea for about a year in 2013 as an English teacher. Before blowing up as Oli London, before the plastic surgeries and the K-pop obsession and he would post pictures of his travels as an international English teacher. There isn't much about his family life that I could find, other than his father was apparently an interior designer and his mother was a stay-at-home mom. Whilst he was in Korea, he lived with a Korean man, who many say was his lover, but I believe it was like a co-teacher to teach Oli London Korean. But Oli would go on to say that most of the Korean that he was taught would be forgotten due to his poor memorization skills. His interest in Asian culture began with his studies into the culture of South Korea, which included the history of Asia and other countries outside of just Korea. In fact, when London originally started living in Asia, his main fascination was with Chinese and Japanese history. His fixation would more so be directed at Korea and their cultural significance on the rest of the world. One of their biggest worldwide influences are with the expanding musical genre that is K-pop. So did I pop off or what? Look, I don't know how people in K-pop wear clothes, okay? So I kind of took an educated guess. By the way, this is the natural part of my head. This is where my hair actually parts naturally. It looks fucking hideous. I don't know why I did this. K-pop, or Korean pop, is an icon of the Korean music industry. It's not surprising to hear of many of these popular bands just being put together by the Korean government for the sake of displaying a certain type of cultural identity through these manufactured labels. And I mean, they're not the only ones to do this. All over the world, it is common practice to create industry-formed groups for the sake of promoting a cultural zeitgeist of their most popular genre contributions. One of these K-pop bands that would hook Oli into the Korean world was originally a band called Speed, which disbanded in 2015 by their record company MBK Entertainment. From there on, there was Big Bang, 4 Minute, Girl Generation, Teen Top, and B-Top. It wasn't until Oli came across BTS did his love for Korean music become a clashing force with his own identity. BTS is arguably one of the most successful and well-known artist groups in the entire world. Even if you're not into K-pop, you have definitely heard their music before. Songs like Dynamite, Butter, Idol, and DNA have been overplayed on social media, in commercials, on mainstream TV. They've been on American talk shows, did interviews for newsletters all over the world, met fucking Joe Biden for some reason, and even served in the military for mandatory service. Which is wild to me. Like, it literally doesn't matter if you are contracted as the most famous musical plant ever to exist. You still have to serve your country at the age of 18. Will anyone even, like, remember BTS by the time that they get out of the military? I mean, will they even be, like, making music or even be a thing? I don't know, and I don't think we're gonna get the answer until, like, a year from now. The band consists of 7 members, which I am now going to mispronounce the names of terribly right now. There's Kim Seok-jin, or Jin, who, by the way, is 30 fucking years old. I thought all these guys were kids, but apparently they are all adults who have been avoiding this military service forever. I'm sorry, I'm still hung up over that. That is crazy. Anyway, there is also Min Yo-jin, or Suga, Jung Ho-seok, or J-Ho, Kim Nam-joon, or RM, Kim Tae-hyung, or V, Jeon Jungkook, or Jungkook, who is literally the only member of BTS I actually knew the name of before doing any of the research for this video. And the subject of interest for this story, Park Jimin, or Jimin. Jimin would be the main point of fascination for Oli London, as he would become so obsessed with Jimin to the point that he wanted to be him. Up until this point, Oli has always had an issue with how he looked. But this wasn't because of any insecurities one might have in their own natural appearances from cultural beauty standards that push this completely unachievable look on people. And over time, these impossible beauty standards make vulnerable people develop body dysmorphia. But from Oli's own words, it would come from the genetics that come from the race that he was born into. Oli London is a British man that has features that were stereotyped as British features. Oli has said before getting any of his major cosmetic changes that his nose was always his biggest insecurity.
When I was growing up as a teenager, I really struggled with the way I looked. I used to have very, very bad acne. I had such a big nose, my face was so round it looked horrible. So when I would go to school, I would get teased, I would get bullied. Whenever I was dating someone, they would always cheat on me or reject me, and I always thought that was just the way I looked, so I thought, okay, I have to change that. Since I started having surgeries, I'm a totally different person. I used to be a shy, insecure boy next door, such anxiety. Now I'm super confident. I can get on stage and sing my songs, I can perform. That's why I think plastic surgery can be a great thing, because, you know, it can change your life.
Because it was way too big, whilst he was looking for a more smaller Korean-like nose. And following up that, a more Korean-like appearance overall. We'll go over like the long list of all of Oli London's cosmetic procedures in just a second, but one of the most extreme examples that Oli has gotten was his eye surgery to make his eyes look more slanted, like Asian eyes. Overall though, Oli's insecurities more came from things typically stereotyped with his own race more than his own personal natural look. And so, because there were a lot of traits of his own that he found undesirable, that he equated it to being too British. And because his desired look were from things that were aesthetically more common in Asian features, this led Oli to the conclusion that it wasn't a dysmorphia thing, it was in his identity. Oli London has stated that he was a transracial person, meaning he was born a British man, but then wanted to get cosmetic surgeries to help him transition into being an Asian man. Now, in terms of those identifying as a different race than the one that they are born as, this actually isn't a new phenomenon that we haven't seen before. this is the story all about how, during this recording, my furnace went out. So don't mind that obnoxious and obvious drone. That's my space heater, the only heat source I own. It's so fucking cold in here. The term transracial is defined as someone transitioning from one racial or ethnic identity to another. It is defined as someone who identifies as being a different race than their ancestral background. People who identify as transracial will oftentimes change their mannerisms or their appearance to more perfectly match the ethnicity that they actually identify with. Now, in terms of its history, the term as we know it today with this definition and context has been fairly new. The conversation of which spiked in popularity in 2015, with Rachel Dolezal being what is currently known today as the most recognized example of this phenomenon. Dolezal tricked so many people of her heritage that she became the head spokesperson of the NAACP a year before the evidence actually came out that she identified as white, and that her parents were actually white. But Rachel clearly isn't the only example, and neither is Oli London. In fact, this phenomenon has actually been recorded way farther back than we actually know it. So let's talk about Grey Owl. Grey Owl being one of the more older examples. Grey Owl was born Archibald Stanfield Bellany in 1888, and he was born in Hastings, New Sussex, England, with the most British name in the known universe. But even though Bellany was born in England, went to Hastings Grammar School, had a Scottish father who married his dead wife's sister, which apparently was illegal back then to do, didn't know that, and had spent most of his early and adult life in England. The motherfucker takes one trip to Nova Scotia, and then all of a sudden, he's a Native American. Dude, I don't know what the fuck is going on and what's happening, what's in Tim Hortons nowadays, but you do it once and it turns into this. I don't know what the fuck this is. Not only did he start identifying as Native American, but he wrote many books under this new identity. Mainly about like trapping and hunting and conservationism and like preserving the environment and the planet. And he was very famous for this, being this very wise Native American and conservationist activist who was teaching about the natural world and preserving the environment. The problem was, it was a lie. And the day this man died, the Bay Nugget, which is the funniest name for a publishing company I've ever heard in my entire life, puts out the first of many exposés on Grey Owl. Although a lot of his works as a naturalist weren't necessarily tainted by this lie at all, because look, it's not like he was writing like utter horseshit, right? His works are well renowned and cited to this day about trapping and preserving the environment and whatnot. Like, he was super well educated in this shit. It's not like he was writing total bullshit. It's not like his works aren't important or impressive. It's just that the origin story for this Native American persona that he made up was a lie. His lie actually went so far that even his publisher didn't know that he was lied to until after the dude died. He believed the lie so much that he tried to prove that Grey Owl was in fact a Native American, but then later had to admit that he was an Englishman. And there's been other more public figures on social media as like more current examples in the mainstream that we could talk about. There's Martina Big, who was on the Maury Show that one time. There was also Treasure Richards, who was on Dr. Phil, claiming to be a white person, although it was revealed like later by like her sisters that she was actually trolling the whole time and that it was like a publicity stunt just for her to get attention, which honestly, makes sense, considering Dr. Phil gives a lot of unnecessary attention to a lot of people that don't deserve it, so makes sense. Even Sachin Littlefeather, the Native American activist who declined Marlon Brando's Academy Award on his behalf and gave this amazing speech on having proper Native American representation in Hollywood. Yeah! Even she was revealed to have been lying about her race the whole fucking time. In 2022, after her death, it was revealed by her family that Littlefeather was actually Mexican, told in a tell-all interview by her own sisters. Her actual name was actually Marie Louise Cruz. Now, it is entirely possible that she could have had, like, native Latin American heritage, but call me crazy, but I think there's a bit of a cultural difference, a significant cultural difference, hemispherically wise as well, time zone wise. The difference between a native Latin American and a Native American, I don't believe that's the same thing. And apparently, according to Marie, the only reason why she decided to take up this persona as being Native American and not a Native Hispanic was because it was more prestigious to be Native American than it was to be Hispanic. See, I don't think that's gonna really make much of a difference. I don't think there's any more or less prestige in that, considering that this was back during a time of white patriarchal hierarchy. So I don't really agree with the thought process on that one, sis. I don't know. There was even an entire organization in Baltimore, Maryland called the Moorish Science Temple of America. In 1918, a man by the name Timothy Drew, or as he preferred to call himself, Noble Drew Ali, would make the claim that African Americans were descendants of the Kingdom of Moab, and thus are Moorish by nationality and Islamic by faith, and that the members of the temple must declare their symbolic nationality as Moroccan without any proof or documentation of said nationality or ethnicity. This, of course, led to a lot of people claiming to be Moorish or Moroccan as part of their weird culture cult thing. I should make a full video on this subject because it is genuinely the weirdest fucking thing you will ever hear about in your entire life. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to recognize when talking about transracialism. Even if the examples of transracial individuals that I just talked about and the identities aren't that new and have been around since like forever, the term as we know it today, transracial, wasn't used to describe this concept until Rachel Dolezal coined it. But even after she claimed her transracial identity, this still came with a ton of fucking controversy. For one, the original term transracial was actually described as parents who would adopt outside of their own race. And a lot of transracial parents were pissed when Rachel Dolezal claimed to be transracial because they claimed that she was adopting and co-opting the term and that the term was being used by people who just wanted to create a character behind an ethnicity. People like Grey Owl and Sachin Littlefeather and the Moorish people wouldn't necessarily be called transracial, neither back then nor today, kind of. More like they were culturally appropriating a race that wasn't their own and claiming it as their own identity to trick people into thinking that they were that identity. And the thing is that there is a difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and I think both of those things do exist. And I think the line starts with transracialism.
I have a deep respect for Korean culture. It's cultural appreciation, not cultural appropriation.
So, I know that the topic of cultural appropriation and cultural identity can be a bit of a touchy subject, right? I mean, if you've ever considered how cultural appropriation and how conversations about it have been handled online, it's kind of seen as like a first world problem, right? It's seen as one of those like SJW terms that nobody takes seriously, that nobody really like engages the conversation about because apparently it's like not a real thing or whatever the fuck. And I can acknowledge that, right? Especially coming from someone who is literally whiter than a Fruit of the Loom pack of wife beaters, right? Like, I acknowledge that. But let me ease you into this conversation with a few easier to digest examples that I think will be inclusive to everybody. So let's say that you're like a huge fan of like this band or something. Let's go with random bands that I'm gonna pick now. Let's just go with like System of a Down or something. I don't know. You've been listening to their music for years. You absolutely love this band. You go to every concert when they're in your state. You own all of their albums. You're even so much of a super fan that you've actually bought like a band shirt when they were on tour. You actually have like a ton of their band shirts. You absolutely adore these shirts. They're your favorite shirts to wear ever. So you're wearing these shirts around for a bit and you're known pretty much as the person who wears band shirts all the time. And then one day you're approached by one of your classmates. Let's just call her, I don't know, Jennifer or something. Jennifer has been complimenting you on your shirts. She says that she really likes them. She thinks they're really cool. She thinks the art is really neat. And she's asking you like, hey, so where exactly did you get those shirts? Because I think they're really cool. And you tell her like exactly like what the shirt is. Like, this is the band shirt. I got this from a concert. This is my favorite band in the world. These shirts have a lot of memories behind them. They're one of my favorite things to wear ever. And she's fascinated, and she's like, oh wow, yeah, that's really cool. So then later on, you start to notice that Jennifer is wearing the same band shirts that you're wearing, right? And she's getting all of this attention that you never necessarily got for wearing your shirts, because at this point, right, you've been wearing these shirts for like a while. It's like a staple of your fashion sense to wear a band shirt. Like, everyone knows that that's like what you wear. People are used to seeing that on you, but now that Jennifer is wearing a band shirt, all eyes are on her, and it's somehow like different now. And you know, she's wearing this shirt, and you know, sure, it's got like a cool like design, like cool art and stuff on it. So it's not like you can actually tell it's a band shirt, but you know it is because you recognize the art on the shirt, because you guys literally are wearing the same shirt. So you ask Jennifer, you're like, hey, so I've noticed that we're wearing the same System of a Down shirt. That's awesome. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm so stoked you noticed. I actually found this at like a Goodwill. It was donated. I got a really good deal on it. I'm really excited. I really like your shirts. And you're happy for her. You're like, oh, she really likes the shirts. That's great. And then you start up the conversation like, so have you actually listened to any of System of a Down's music? Because look, if you really, really like the shirts, the art on that shirt is actually an album cover. And I think if you listen to that music, you're really, really gonna like it. And her response to that is, oh, no, that music is garbage. I just really like the shirt. Now, let's take that same t-shirt scenario again. This time, let's say it's your school bully. We'll call him like Jake or something. And he's been picking on you for literal years about the shirts you wear in your music. He says your music sense are trash, your shirts are trash, only like homicidal weirdos would listen to that music because it's like thrasher music and stuff like that. But then one day, Jake comes into school wearing a System of a Down t-shirt. The same band and same shirts that he's been making fun of you for literal years. And you approach him and you're just like, hey, I thought you didn't like System of a Down. And he looks at you and he's like, yeah, I don't. And you inform him, well, you're wearing a System of a Down t-shirt, so do you know any of their songs or their lyrics by chance? And he just looks at you and he's just like, no, I don't listen to that fucking trashy music, I just like the shirt. Now, in a free society that we try to live in, anyone can wear whatever the fuck they want, regardless on if it bothers anyone else. But doesn't it bother you just a little bit, a tad, that these people that don't have the same connection as you do are just wearing shirts of bands that they don't even know or like at all? I mean, yeah, look, it's just a shirt, okay? And this is America. It's literally a piece of art that a band made, put on a piece of fabric. Anyone could wear that shirt, it doesn't matter. But when it comes from people who don't know anything about the designs that are on the shirts, or in the worst case scenario have been mocking you for years for liking that band behind the shirt, and then suddenly they start wearing those shirts and making that their entire personality, and they're suddenly getting all this positive attention for wearing a shirt that they don't even know the band of or care about, well, that same feeling is the same way other ethnicities feel when you take parts of their culture, adopt it as part of your own style or aesthetic, without actually having any direct relationship to it. And listen, don't get me wrong, it's not like they're not willing to share cultures, but if you're gonna take it up as your own cultural identity and not give any credence to where that actually comes from, then that's cultural appropriation. Another form of cultural appropriation is fetishizing a culture or costuming a culture to hyper-focus one part of their identity. And to understand this part, let me ease you into another example that is a bit trickier if you're not really keen on like internet stuff or internet subculture, but it is the best example of this form of cultural appropriation. Okay, so let's say that you've been watching anime for a while now. You've been casually watching stuff like Boku no Hero or Demon Slayer or One Piece if you want to torture yourself, and you're just like a casual watcher and the filthy one at that. So you watch anime, you like the genre, but you still enjoy like watching stuff from your own country as well. Like, you like anime, but occasionally you'll want to watch something like, I don't know, fucking The Office or something. You just like to diversify your plate every once in a while, and that's totally fine. So you go into like some message board, let's say it's like 4chan or Reddit or something, and you're talking to folks about your interest in anime, and you start talking to this one person, and right off the bat, they're just a little weirder than the other people you're talking to. Like, everyone else is just casually sharing their favorite animes and shit like that. But then you get this one user who talks like this.
Hey, Anita. I'm a non-san and I absolutely love anime, and my fave is Naruto.
I fucking love this spray.
Okay, so anyways, I'm going to tell you about the best day of my life when I met my hot husband, Sasuke. Oh my fucking god, he was so freaking kawaii in person. Super kawaii desu. When I walked onto Tokyo Street, I looked up and saw Sasuke.
Konnichiwa, sir.
OMG, super kawaii Sasuke-sama. Then he turned chibi, then unchibi. He looked at me and then he saw how hot I am. He grabbed my hand and winked. Then pulled me behind a pocky shop and started to kiss me. Oh my god, his tongue tasted like ramen. Then, I saw some baka fat bitch watching us, and I could tell she was undressing him with her eyes. OMG, I couldn't believe it either. So I yelled, Baka Nico, that's my man. Why don't you go hook up with Naruto? Cause Sasuke-sama loves me. Then Sasuke held me close, and said, he would only ever love me and kissed me again. Then, we went to his apartment and banged all night long.
So, I know that was a pretty exaggerated example, and I know that was probably a lot for all of you to take in all at once, but this is a great example of cultural appropriation, and it is something that has been part of anime and internet subculture for forever. The Weeaboo.
I got a joke for you. Fucking Weeaboos go to Japan and be like, where are the subtitles?
But don't get it confused with, like, weeb, because apparently that's, like, a term of endearment for anime watchers now. But Weeaboo is, like, still a thing. And it is still what we know of today as the anime fan that essentially thinks that they are Japanese by just watching anime. Yep.
I have a katana collection. I've been learning Japanese on Rosetta Stone for like 5 weeks now. I've had so much sex with my body pillow that it stands on its own now. My wife is coming to life.
So the best definition of Weeaboo that I could find is ironically from Urban Dictionary, which I know is not the most reliable source, but I think this is a fair definition. From the user Beautiful Fool back in 2009, a Weeaboo is described as a non-Japanese person who basically denounces their own culture and calls themselves Japanese. They try to learn Japanese through the anime they watch, and usually end up pronouncing it wrong and looking like a total idiot. Keep in mind that a non-Japanese person can like the culture, watch anime, speak the language, and respect the culture while still keeping in touch with their own, which keeps them from being a weeaboo. Weeaboos basically disrespect the culture and make complete asses of themselves. Another term for this is the Japanophile, which is just basically internet slang for someone who is like obsessed with Japan.
Don't talk shit about Attack on Titan. It's a really good show.
Regardless, a lot of people from anime communities and even the Japanese have had a huge issue with weeaboos since like forever. Ranging from thinking that anime is a direct reflection on Japanese culture and society, fetishizing Japanese people based on the anime women that they look up to, trying to learn the language through anime and only like really understanding 8 words. The biggest problem with weeaboos is how they put Japanese culture on this pedestal of superiority over every other culture in the world. But their perspectives of that culture only comes from watching cartoons. That'd be the equivalent of, say, a Japanese person getting their perspective of American culture from just watching, like, Family Guy or something.
I've been really thinking about going to Japan soon. I know how to use chopsticks. I know hiragana. Cause you know, I don't feel like anybody here is on my anime expertise level. First, I'll have to get a job. That's the first thing.
And assuming that is the entirety of American culture. Now, references to certain Asian traditions in anime has to come from something that is genuinely part of that culture. It wouldn't necessarily be fair to say that anime doesn't project at least some amount of Asian culture in their settings and their references. Anime is as much a part of Asian culture as any of their other cultural contributions are to the world. But to generalize all Asian culture as you see it in an anime setting and suggesting that all of Japan must somehow just be like that is highly offensive. Just like how suggesting this costume of an American Indian is a generalized version of all native cultures, or how this scene from Peter Pan is proper representation of how all native people are, and that these two things are just as culturally significant or equivalent to real native cultures, except they're not. They are fan fictions in comparison. These are fetishized, whitewashed versions of those things. This is cultural appropriation. Now, what does this conversation have to do with people like Oli London or Rachel Dolezal, or even transracial identities as a whole? The idea of being transracial is taking those fetishized versions of other cultures, the stereotypes of said ethnicities, and adopting them into your own identity and calling yourself fair representation of that race, despite the fact that you've never lived a day of that life with the same racial struggles or background that comes with identifying as that race. And if you take people like Sachin Littlefeather or Rachel Dolezal, this gets especially more complicated. Now, don't get me wrong, right? There is a lot of social stigma behind activism and seemingly standing on a soapbox and projecting to the crowd how good of a person you are for believing in something that should be commonplace, or at least the bare minimum. However, because of past historical context and structural political systems that still exist today, this makes it unnecessarily difficult for the bare minimum to be like, oh, I don't know, don't be fucking racist to be the standard of living. Like, look, I'm not here to change what you think about any of the following that we just talked about. You live your life, okay? Wear whatever the fuck you want to wear for Halloween, do whatever you want, say whatever the fuck you want. It's a free country. And I'm just a person on the internet. I can't change your opinion. Like, I'm not gonna make any significant cultural change by ranting and raving about Oli London for an hour. If I want to project how much of a good person I am for thinking that racism is bad, I would be on TikTok, not on YouTube. But anyways, there's always some sort of visceral reaction to being a person that benefits from white privilege, that doesn't experience systemic oppression, speaking out against that system that was built to benefit you and make your life easier. To suggest that, hey, maybe the system should work for everyone actually and not just me. For some reason that gets people really rallied up. You'll usually get one of two extreme reactions that exist on this spectrum. You either get the far right side of the spectrum calling you a white knight or a race traitor, and God forbid they call you whoa. That's a scary word for Elmo. Or on the other hand, you'll get the rejection from those that you actually want to champion. You get accused of being a fake activist or a fake ally. Like, either way, no matter how genuine you try to be in trying not to be a shitty person, there's always gonna be that one person that's gonna accuse you of being a shitty person anyway. And what transracial people do is take these two extreme responses and kind of just mesh them into one. It's like, not only are they fake allies and literally faking their heritage, not only are they throwing out one race for another, but they're also spearheading themselves as a spokesperson for that race, despite the fact that systemically, culturally, mentally, physically, psychologically, they do not struggle or have ever experienced the same struggles as the race that they are cosplaying as for their activism. They essentially take away the voices of real people that do struggle culturally and socially, and they put the spotlight on themselves to project how much they fight for those who actually deserve that spotlight. I mean, these people aren't just putting on blackface, they're taking the voices of marginalized communities and making it all about them. And look, don't even get me started on how the term transracial is a direct mockery of being transgender, despite the fact that we have historical record of trans people and surgeries going back centuries. And the fact that trans people have been a part of our history for forever, and that there are millions of researchers and professionals that validate the existence of transitioning from one gender to the other, is valid and medically necessary for those who do suffer with gender dysphoria and gender identity disorders. The same experts and research that has disapproved this idea that people can just change their race the same way that people can change their gender, because gender is the social construction around biological sex. Your ethnicity is not. And how this circles back to Oli London is this. Oli London has been living in and out of Korea since 2013. He's been teaching English and traveling around Asia and learned all about their history and their culture. And yet, despite how long he's been invested in learning about South Korea, the only takeaway from all of that is that Jimin is cute and he wants to look like him. That's it. He doesn't know a lick of fucking Korean. He doesn't know anything about the social structures and the systems of Korea. He doesn't know anything about their culture except from listening to fucking K-pop. And then all of a sudden, he identifies as Korean? This man is a walking definition of a Koreaboo, which is just a Korean weeaboo. And it's not that Oli London wanted to be Korean necessarily, it's just that he wanted to be Jimin specifically. To Oli London, BTS and Jimin is the representation of all Korean culture. And so he feels inclined to call himself Korean because aesthetically, he wants to look like Jimin. I mean, this doesn't possibly have anything to do with the fact that he possibly has mental health issues that directly affects the way he views himself, or has some sort of dysmorphia about his own identity. Oh, no. The only possible conclusion is that he was born in the wrong race. And boy, did he take that conclusion with so much fucking confidence. Oli London, in his journey to discover his true Korean self, has spent well over $300,000 to look like Jimin. The following cosmetic procedures include 6 nose jobs, eyelid reduction to slanting them to look more like Asian eyes, an eye lift revision, facial contouring, reconstructions of the cheekbone, symmetrical jaw revision, a chest reduction, a brow lift, a temple lift, teeth procedures, which I think is unrelated, but still. Skin whitening injection, facial feminization surgery, and he even made plans for a penis reduction surgery because he wanted the average penis length of a Korean. You know, I gotta admit, that one's a new one. I have not heard of that one before. Look, guys, listen, I want to enjoy the earth that I live on, okay? I want to go outside and touch grass. But I have to coexist with this. And as long as I have to coexist with this, I will be staying inside my house forever.
Am I going crazy? Would I even know? Am I right back where I started all those years ago? Wanna guess the ending? I suggest you don't. I swear to God that all I ever wanted was a little bit of everything, all of the time. A bit of everything, all of the time. Happiness is fraudulent, my sanity is dead. I'm feeling lazy and I'm staying in bed.
Overall, in his journey to become a Korean, Oli London has had a total of 32 surgeries. And even with his comments about penis reduction surgery, it's obvious what he's going for. He's going for the most aesthetically appealing fantasy version of what being a Korean is actually like without actually being Korean himself. The surgeries and his identity brought him internet infamy, many calling his surgeries offensive and fetishizing Asian culture by turning it into this soft boy aesthetic that everyone can just achieve. And it's not like, you know, an actual ethnic identity or anything. The difference between Oli London's identity and his claims of being Korean is simply this. If Oli really wanted to, he can just go back to being white at any time. He can stop being Korean whenever he wants to and just go back to being white. And the same goes with other transracial people that we already talked about. Like, all Rachel Dolezal has to do is literally brush out her cornrows and she would literally look like a white woman. And Sachin Littlefeather was literally just wearing a Spirit of Halloween costume. All I'm saying is, your girl should not have gotten away with this for so long. But people who actually do identify with that race can't magically make themselves not that race when it's not convenient for them anymore. That's just who they are, and they have to live with that. Whilst these people don't have to live that way forever. They can easily just go back to being their original race whenever they get bored of the aesthetic. Except It's not an aesthetic. It's not an identity that should be displayed as a desirable fashion trend. It's who people are. And people can't just magically make that go away, unlike Oli London. Oli London has asserted his identity over and over again. And a lot of people call him out on this. He made terrible music for a while that nobody fucking listened to because it was so obvious that he was just trying to be a Jimin clone. What the? Hello? Excuse me? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what the fuck?
Please. Oh, wait, Mr. Postman. Hi, I'm Sam.
There he is!
Some of you might know me as Bedhead's brother, some of you might know me as SAMIS. I'm here because Bedhead's tripping the fuck out right now, and you get me. Now, I've done some research on Oli London. I gave their Twitter a look, and shit! Took a look at their Twitter to see that it was mostly anti-climate shit, and they spent an entire day addressing Harry Styles and wearing a dress. January 12th was very busy for them. Now, I'm not gonna jump into the sticky, icky, gross politics of that. That's what they're for, you know, that's Bedhead's job. I'm here to talk about their music. Now, I'm not Kenny Beats, okay? I know I don't have much experience, but I've been, producing and making music since 2018, and I take a look at their website here, and oh, they've also been making music since 2018. What a surprise! How fucking convenient. And just to make sure that I'm keeping it leveled, I'm not even going to pick which song I'm going to review. I'm gonna let Bedhead sent me this song. It's called Korean Boy, and I'm just gonna have to. I guess I'm just gonna have to check it out, you know? Let's give it a little look-see. Let's give it a little bit of a... Wow. So I see that they're very subtle. I see that, now would probably be a good time to tell you that I've never really listened to a K-pop album. It's just never been my genre. I don't know if this is how it's supposed to look, but, no, this looks like straight up mockery. This doesn't look real. One sec, maybe if I just watch a little bit more. Jimin said he loves me every day. Now I'm eating kimchi. Yeah, this is just straight up mockery. The amount of mental gymnastics that has to be done to release this to the public is fucking... I don't know. I'm really baffled. I mean, it looks like, because I know that his whole thing is that, like, he's done this whole procedure and he's like making himself look Korean, but it looks like he built up his entire personality based off of stereotypes of Korean people. And I really don't know how to fucking feel about that. Really, well, I mean, I do. It's not pretty. It's not a good look. I'll tell you that. Future Sam, I did not mean literally in that clip. I mean, I do mean literally, but that is not the sole reason why this is a bad thing. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. 1 second. Okay. Alright, so I listened to a full BTS album just to make sure that I have an accurate look, you know, as to what K-pop is supposed to be. So I listened to a whole BTS album. People seem to like BTS, okay? So I'm just gonna I gave them a shot. It seemed a little more high quality than this. So we're just gonna jump back into it, see how good of a job that they did replicating K-pop. Okay. Okay, my bad. Did not mean to freak out like that. So I'm just gonna look at one of their other songs. Maybe Korean Boy is just like a bad representation of their music as a whole. So I'm just gonna take a look. I'm just gonna take a look at something else, something that I can maybe give a better critique on. Let me see. I'm just gonna look at cyberbullies. Why not? That's what I'm fucking doing.
As the midnight hour strikes its hand, a cyberbully strikes again, trying their best to destroy the positive vibes of a shining star. But we are coming for you.
Okay. I can ignore the fact that this music video doesn't really make any sense. I don't know who's being cyberbullied. I don't know if the person inside the little laptop is cyberbullying. I don't know if the person that's outside of the laptop is being cyberbullied, if they're the victim. I don't know what the fuck's going on. But this is not even fucking K-pop, okay? I don't know if K-pop is just a way to like stylize things, if it's a stylization thing, but this is not fucking K-pop. 90% of the lyrics is in English. What the fuck am I listening to? I listen to an entire K-pop album. I don't even fucking like that genre, just to see what K-pop is about. If 90% of your song is in English, it's probably not fucking K-pop. This doesn't make jack shit any sense. If they know any Korean outside of the first shit that you learn off of Duolingo, I swear to fucking God. Why did I even do this? Why am I doing this to myself? Why do you do this to me, Bedhead? What the fuck is happening to me? Well, would you take a look at that? Looks like we're all out of time. Thank you so much for joining me in this segment of another person's video. Maybe if you ask for me again, I can review something that I actually know jack shit about. Like, I don't know, if they make a video about fucking Tom McDonald. Been on my watch list. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming? I don't fucking know. I'm not on TV often.
Who the fuck was that? This wasn't even being culturally insensitive at this point. This is just straight up identity theft.
If I'm sleeping and the world goes up in smoke, please wake me and tell me all about how I'm broke. If the future is waiting but I'm stuck on a rope, just cut it and tell me all about how I'm woke. Oh shit, he isn't joking at a time like this.
In 2021, after Oli London got his eyelid lift, he came out on social media.
You did it. Good job. I can't believe it. I'm proud of you.
So Oli was already part of the LGBTQ community. He primarily dated Asian and Korean men and wouldn't date anything outside of that but just Korean men specifically. But this time, Oli London would come out as non-binary.
But I am coming out as non-binary. I don't feel I identify as male or female. I just feel like I'm just in the middle. And my pronouns are they, them, Korean, Jimin.
And begin his transition as a non-binary Korean trans woman.
Well, look who's online again. Went down the hole to find reason inside again. Well, buddy, we found it. Now look out for the big tech. Looks like I'm surrounded.
Though we've talked about how offensive and insensitive Oli has been up until this point, let's try and take him at his word here. Stretch the limits of our imagination, if you will, to try and understand how we got to this point. If Oli London was genuine about his struggles with his identity, as it expands way past just that of feeling a little insecure about how he looks as a British man, and desires to be more of the Korean aesthetic, if you put that aside for just a second and think about all the times Oli has talked about his struggles with his identity, him coming out as trans actually makes a lot of sense. And I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me. Think about it. Although his transracial identity is viewed as offensive, insensitive, and even stereotypical as it should be, it might have been Oli's only way of coming to terms with his identity not lining up with what the vision is for himself, i.e., Oli struggles with feeling out of touch with his male body. And yeah, it might have taken identity fraud for him to get there, but when Oli came out and began transitioning from male to female, he actually looked genuinely happy. In fact, I say since he's already had a bunch of surgeries already to give him a more feminine, softer look, I'd say he transitioned a lot better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. Now, this isn't to say that transgender surgeries are required in order to be trans, or hell, they're not even required to even pass. I mean, if you can't afford surgery, because, I mean, God forbid, they're like thousands of dollars without insurance anyway, then you not getting surgeries doesn't make you less of a trans person, and people who do get surgeries, it doesn't make them a better trans person. But it is to say that Oli can very well come to terms with his trans identity, and it would logically make more sense than identifying as a Korean. In terms of genetic similarities in facial makeups amongst men of different ethnicities, Asian men usually have smaller, softer features with harsher focuses standing out around their eyes and their nose, and the Korean beauty standard and industry has always promoted this idea of having an ageless appearance. It might sound familiar, and that's because it is. Those same beauty standards are applied heavily in Western culture. In the American beauty world, an ageless, softer appearance is heavily pushed on women. The only difference really is a sharper complexion around the jawline and the cheeks. What is also important to note is that these Asian beauty standards are equally distributed between the two genders. And sure, there can be some notable differences between the two sexes, like how they maintain things like their hair, their eyebrows, and physique appearing more boxy in comparison to the rounder look in women. But overall, both are expected to maintain this look that appears very soft and feminine. Not as it is in the West, where women are practically never allowed to age. Men don't nearly have as high of expectations for appearance, and those who genuinely do care about their appearance have their masculinity questioned for it. I mean, for fuck's sakes, in the year 2023, we still have men who genuinely believe that if you wash your butthole in the shower, you are considered gay. This is a thing that people believe for some reason. So men out there, wash your ass. Seriously. Maintaining an unclean poop shooter is not hot. Men in the West are just allowed to be disgusting. They can have copious amounts of body hair. They aren't pushed by advertising as much as women to look a certain way. Hell, they're even allowed to have gray hair. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't products to help men look younger than they actually are, or to even suggest that there aren't impossible beauty standards for men to fit into. I mean, hell, the fitness industry and the bodybuilding industry creates this impossible standard for men to achieve physique-wise. What I'm saying is that these impossible beauty standards couldn't be more vastly different. Whereas the Asian standard is evenly distributed across both genders, both are expected to have slender builds, smoother faces, big eyes, and small features. Both are expected to appear ageless. Oli sees this aesthetic as superior, mainly because this softer, smoother, more feminine look and ageless appearance appeals to his inner struggle with his gender. He wants the more feminine look of an Asian man not because he thinks he's Asian, but he desires that feminine look because Oli knows deep down that he is trans. There's only one problem with this theory. Oli wants to take on the look and identity of Rose from Blackpink, even changing his name to Rose London.
I now want to join Blackpink. I'm auditioning for YG. I'm doing a cover of How You Like That because I should totally be the 5th member of Blackpink. And my new name is Rose London. Rose is now my bias. Lisa was my bias before. Now Rose is my bias. So I want to look like her. So I've just had all my surgery to look like Rose. I still love Jimin, but I want to look like a girl, a Korean girl, just like Rose. And I want to be the 5th member of Blackpink.
You know, he came so close to proving my theory. He came like this close to finally getting the point. And then it just went right over his head. Now, I understand seeing someone and liking certain aspects of their appearance. In the plastic surgery world, people do this all the time where they bring in a picture of someone they like, whether that's a celebrity with a certain feature, and request that they look like them. Like, this isn't new. Except with Oli, he just takes it to a whole new level, honestly. He wants to take these pop stars' identities for some reason. Oli fails in establishing his own trans identity and existing as himself outside of the influences from, and I cannot emphasize this enough, right? The one exposure of Korean culture that he has attached himself to and decided that that represents all Korean culture. It's fine for him to be inspired by these things. I'm inspired by a lot of different fashion and styles, and I adopt these trends into my own personality. But that's the thing. I'm still my own person by the end of the day. Like, I know I'm lazy. I'm still me, and I'm still confident in this version of myself. Whereas Oli's insecurities are so strong that he cannot separate himself from these two influences that he has essentially created a character of. The people like Jimin and Rose are to Oli London are like his mentors, his guides, his distant friends that he wants the attention of so badly, and he feels that he is destined to meet someday. But the reality is that neither Jimin nor Rose have ever actually acknowledged Oli London ever. Even though he's all over social media and mainstream news altering their appearances to look like another person, to them, Oli is a nobody. and to the LGBTQ and transgender community because he identifies as transracial, making a mockery of what it is actually like to be transgender. He's nothing to the trans community either. In K-pop circles, in the LGBTQ and transgender communities, even in the plastic surgery world, and on social media, Oli isn't a welcomed figure. He's a loser. He's a crazy man who has mocked trans people and Korean people, made terrible fucking music, and literally cannot exist without trying to be a terribly deformed copy of someone else. And after a while, I think Oli began to recognize that he will never fit in anywhere. As desperately as he tries to fit himself in these communities, all he's doing is offending everyone around him. And all of that rejection has led Oli to where we are right now. Now, you're probably wondering, if Oli London identifies as a transgender woman, a non-binary person, uses they, them pronouns, then why do I keep referring to him as Oli and use he, him pronouns? Why don't I respect his new gender identity? And it's not to be an asshole, it's because those are the pronouns he prefers. Oli no longer goes by Rose anymore, and he doesn't identify as a Korean woman. In fact, he actually apologized for calling himself transracial, but why the sudden change in heart?
So I want to take this chance upon reflection to apologize to Park Jimin personally. I hope you know that I love and adore you and admire you so much you have no idea. But please, I'm sorry if I ever seemed a little bit too crazy, a little bit too obsessive, or a little bit too much. I never meant to hurt your feelings, Jimin. I'm sure you probably see a lot of my videos, maybe see a lot of my songs, and think maybe sometimes I'm a little bit too obsessive or too crazy, but I just want to apologize to you.
Well, it's because Oli has been documenting his detransition journey, which is undoubtedly due to the negativity he's been getting from trying to identify as a Korean, but also in a major sense of whiplash that I was not expecting. Oli has said that this is coming from a moment he had with Jesus Christ, and that he now identifies as a Christian conservative who fights for the LGBTQ youth experiencing their struggles in their own identities. And he helps them by fighting against transgender treatments like hormones and surgeries. Oli also believes that the Democratic Party pushes for gender identity confusion, and he fights on the fringes of this idea of protecting the children from irreversible damage. So, you know that feeling that you get when you get hit in the face with a baseball bat? Well, take that feeling, right? But the person with the baseball bat is going 75 miles an hour on a semi-truck, and they hit you at full force into a pit of glass and rattlesnakes, and then lightning hits you. That is what the whiplash felt for me, because what in the fuck? Oh my fucking god. This is hell. This is hell. This is hell. This is hell on earth. This is literally the last fucking makeup look I have to do for this video. And I don't want to fucking do it anymore. Especially since I have to do like the Christian mom look, and they like wear so much goddamn bronzer and makeup. I'm gonna look so dumb. Why do I do this to myself? Some of you white bitches really out here overcompensating on how insecure you actually are in yourself by wearing like so much fucking more makeup than I ever would in my life. And I'm running out of foundation too. Love this for me. I want to die. Let's just get this over with.
Somebody's gotta wear a pretty skirt. Somebody's gotta be the one to flirt. Somebody's gotta wanna hold his handsome God-made girl. Somebody's gotta make him get dressed up. Give him a reason to wash that truck. Somebody's gotta teach him how to dance. So God-made girls. He's something soft and loud and sweet and proud. Why they make enough to break your heart. Fuck yourself. Beautiful and breakable. I just wanna be alive up in the dark. So God-made girls. God-made girls. Oh my God, why? Why do you hate me? Why?
Yeah, so, yeah, so I think we can all agree this is a definite no right? Maybe it's just the lighting and it just makes it look really... Nope. Even if I change the lighting, I still look like shit. First of all, okay, let's just establish this. I am not a blonde, nor will I ever be. This is a disaster. I look like Taylor Swift's drunk aunt. I look like the female version of Donald Trump. I look like Ivanka Trump if someone ran her over. I look fucking 40 years old. I was gonna say that I kinda look like my aunt, but that would be an insult to my aunt. She is a beautiful woman. This is not. This is a disaster. So, Oli London has been going on more conservative, right-wing talk shows like Tucker Carlson. He's been on Newsmax talking about woke culture and how the transgender SJW community pushed him into gender nonconformity and identifying as a Korean.
So obviously I've had a difficult time with my gender identity struggles. I was never unhappy with how I looked. So I started changing, I started dressing as a Korean woman, and I realized that was a big mistake and I just want to be a boy. But, you know, is it any wonder people like me and young people want to change their gender when we have the normalization of this in our schools in this country? Children are taught from a young age, from the age of 5 in some cases, that it's okay to change their gender. It's okay to, you know, wear a skirt. It's okay for a boy to use a gender-neutral toilet when it puts girls at risk. This is the new norm, and schools are teaching about toxic masculinity. They're eroding the alpha male. The alpha straight male has been eroded. You know, Tucker, what happened years ago when kids used to go to school, they used to idolize Superman and astronauts. Now kids are being pushed this radical ideology. They're taught to idolize weak men like Harry Styles, weak politicians like Beto O'Rourke. Why is this happening, you know? And is it any wonder people like me fall victim to this, that I had all this surgery, I tried to change because, you know, I kind of fell victim to this mentality. I'm an adult, but, you know, these kids can't make these decisions on their own. They're being pushed this radical agenda, and I'm grateful that I've come out the other side. I'm grateful I found God. But, you know, I want to speak up for these kids that are confused with their gender. A lot of kids have gender dysphoria, and, you know, that wasn't a thing 20 years ago, Tucker. This is what's being taught in the school system.
What I think Oli fails to recognize is that even the most left-wing SJW woke types were talking negatively about him. They weren't down for what he was doing. They thought what he was doing was not only a mockery of trans people, but also incredibly fucking racist. And honestly, given everything that we've already discussed at this point, can you blame them? The LGBTQ community did not accept Oli London's Korean identity. Even when Oli decided to transition for real, they were still trying to copy off as someone else as a creepy mega fan. Oli London was never trans as he claims now on Tucker Carlson and other talk shows. And even the LGBTQ community that's against gatekeeping and denouncing other people's transness, even those fucking people are denouncing Oli London. So how does this affect Oli London's identity now? If we're gonna take him seriously and not see this as a total grift as it is for attention, for the majority of him exploring his identity, Oli has been rejected by everyone that he's tried to fit in with. I mean, he was rejected by the K-pop scene, by Koreans, by the trans community. So seeing nowhere else to fit in, Oli decided in an act of spite against himself and everyone else who rejected him, he denounces his identity as a Korean and just decides to go full right-wing in an attempt to fit in literally anywhere.
But I've come to realize that actually I am a man and I want to stay as a man, so I'm going to revert to my original pronouns, which is he, him, and call Ian.
Bruh. But the problem with this is that right-wingers like Tucker Carlson and anyone on Fox News and MSNBC are desperate as shit. Their anti-trans story of the week has been running a dry spell. Most people see through their whole spiel. Like, we get it, drag queens bad, trans kids indoctrination, trans women predator, trans people bad. But we know that's not true. We know that most of their stories that they've reported about trans people are just wrong. They're so desperate to keep up this storyline that they'll even result in making shit up. But what Oli effectively does is put the whip right in Tucker's hand to beat the metaphorical horse that Oli's essentially become. Oli just gave Tucker Carlson and other right-wing news sites their new example of how bad trans people can be and how deranged and degenerate the community is, despite the fact that Oli was never part of the trans community. Like, Oli talks all this shit about how indoctrinated trans people are and how they want to convince everyone around them that they're trans, even though he was never part of the community to begin with. Because Everyone fucking hates this guy. He has no redeeming qualities. All aspects of his personality are mirrored off of someone else. He has no original viewpoints or opinion. His hobbies seem fake as fuck. His whole face is a copy. His music is a copy. His style of clothing, his taste in music, his everything is essentially stolen. There's nothing original about it. And when you've based your entire personality and identity off of copying everything else, you don't have an identity at that point. You're no one. Now, I have told you the entirety of Oli London's internet history. I have presented all of the information on his many transformations and what he has become online. And I have discussed how someone like Oli is nothing new and is something we've actually seen before in societal consciousness. But I'm sure that you guys have gotten to this point in the video, or you've probably skipped ahead to this chapter, or maybe you've left a comment or something saying along the lines of like, "Lazy, why are you taking someone like Oli London seriously? I mean, he's so obviously a troll. You really just fall for everything that you see online, don't you? You uneducated, ignorant, chronically online, actual incel loser." Maybe, but that's beyond the point. And here's the thing. I think that two things can be true at once. I think that Oli London is someone with massive image issues and has taken plastic surgeries way too far to fix what his dysmorphia sees as a problem. But I also see why people don't take this man seriously. One of the biggest, and I mean numerical size, not actual body size, characters on the internet that is oftentimes dismissed as a troll is Nikocado Avocado.
Excuse me. This place is a mess.
He's someone that we've seen break character multiple times. Someone who people have actually met in real life and say that he doesn't actually act this over the top in real life.
Oh, don't knock me back.
Like, all the signs are pointing to show that this constant stream of questionable content is how he acts as the character Nikocado Avocado, but that's not necessarily Nicholas Perry. I mean, Oopaville has been making his own series of content to show that this character is genuine, but for me it's like highly questionable because there are so many times where he genuinely breaks character to a point that I'm pretty sure they're playing it up for the lulz.
I pooped. You pooped? Yeah. Oh shit.
Is it running down your leg?
No, it's pancaked up there because my underwear's really tight.
It's pancaked.
And the problem with this over-exaggeration of Nick's character is that not only does he over-exaggerate his presentation and personality, but also in his diet. And the reason for this change in his diet when it comes to his character is because although the character is fun to poke fun of and laugh at, the only way Nick is able to keep up with this facade is because of a deep personal struggle internally going on with himself. I mean, you can still come across as an internet personality, an internet troll, a character actor, a personality illusionist, but still have deep-rooted psychological issues. Two things can be true at once. Nikocado's personality and online presentation is way over-exaggerated and is most likely staged. I can believe like almost 70 to 80% of his act at this point. I don't think he's necessarily lying about what goes on in his personal life that he shares on his channel, including all the drama that he gets into with his own husband.
I'm surprised you could even take them off with those fat cankles.
Oh, I'm seeing stars. I'm seeing stars.
It's probably your diabetes. You're such a loser. You are such a worthless piece of garbage.
But the crying, the water weight meme, the bouncing and shaking around is clearly a front to hide what is also true. On top of Nick's troll-like behavior and exaggeration, he has also talked candidly about having an eating disorder. Back when Nikocado was a vegan, he would often talk about how poor his health was with his vegan diet, how he was extremely underweight and didn't take care of himself. I mean, part of that has to do with the fact that Nick was probably not supplementing the food categories that he took out of his diet with the vitamins that most vegans take to compensate not getting those vitamins from the food that they refuse to eat. But regardless of this speculation, Nick's relationship with food has always been incredibly toxic. From near starvation when he was a vegan to then going to the extreme of gorging and binge eating. Regardless of these two things being true, what's disturbing about these two clashing truths is that Nick has effectively set the bar for what an effective trolling looks like online. Listen, just playing a character and blurring the lines isn't enough. You have to commit to the bit, even if it's at the expense of your own body, your appearance, and how you think about yourself. Even if it affects your personal mental health, if you are not putting yourself through hell for the meme, is the troll really worth the hype? And I feel like Oli embraces this trolling effect. If he's gonna troll the K-pop community or the trans community or whoever he's trying to piss off, he can't just identify as a Korean for the lulz. He needs to get the surgeries. He needs to make the terrible music. He needs to live in Korea and know only like 8 Korean phrases. And part of this facade is very much based in this fiction. In a video expose of sorts, one of Oli London's ex-friends, who was seen with Oli in a lot of his mini documentaries like Hooked on the Look or Botched, says that Oli doesn't even listen to K-pop.
Oli has been using Jimin since day one. Oli doesn't care about BTS. Let me clarify something here. Last year we were both in Seoul together. I left in the middle of June, and then like a week before BTS was playing in Seoul, so I was mad because I had to go back to work. And basically Oli was in Seoul when BTS played in Seoul, and he didn't even go to see them. So that's how much he couldn't care less about BTS. He's just caring about how much trendy and how much view and money he can make using K-pop and using BTS.
And that the cardboard cutout of Jimin that apparently Oli London married originally belonged to her. Also, Oli sued another one of his friends on Judge Rinder for apparently ditching him in Dubai. It's a very bizarre episode. It's not really important to the lore. I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was really weird. But the point is that Oli is willing to do just about anything to keep up with this image that he's real, despite the fact that Oli is suing all of those that are close to him that clarify that it's all just a big joke. And considering how controversial Oli's identity has been with identifying as transracial, I think that knowing that it's a joke just to offend people on purpose is extremely worse in hindsight. I feel like at the very least, if he's not being self-aware and is trying to take himself seriously, then at that point it's just a sad state of ignorance, and not knowing what he's doing is incredibly offensive. But if you think about it, if it was all self-aware and a troll and a joke, then that is objectively worse. Like, he knows what he's doing is fucked up at that point. Because now you're just being racist and offensive on purpose. But anyways, what's a better way to prove how much of a troll you are than making an appearance on Dr. Phil? Because that's a good idea.
Shut the hell up, bitch.
So, the Dr. Phil episode is interesting, mainly because the friend I was talking about, Frenchie Morgan, the one who like exposed him for being fake, goes on this episode of Dr. Phil and tries to pretend to care about how many plastic surgeries Oli has gotten, like consecutively back to back, and how dangerously unhealthy that is.
Yeah, that's the issue. He's doing back to back to back. He did 5 surgeries in one day in Korea, which is extremely dangerous. I think he's happier now that he looks that way because he's, you know, he doesn't look exactly like Jimin, but he has that idol look.
But like, bitch, dude, you have had so many plastic surgeries yourself. And this episode actually was 2 years before she made the video telling her audience that Oli London was fake as fuck. So I don't know if Dr. Phil was able to restore their friendship after that. A very rare Dr. Phil L there. What are you talking about, very rare L? Are you serious? The fucking man, like, exploits people. What the fuck are you talking about? Why am I talking to a mask for this video? I'm going insane. What's also interesting is Oli London talks about how much his plastic surgeries really affect his day-to-day in like a negative way. Like, he can't feel most of his face. He can only feel like the metal in his face. He can't smile or kiss his Jimin cardboard husband because it hurts so much to move his mouth, and how much that negatively affects his day-to-day life, despite talking about how many plastic surgeries he has had and how much it negatively affects him. He's also very open about how much he loves being in recovery, and it almost gives him a high that then wears off once the novelty of loving his new face becomes obsolete and he has to go and fix the next thing.
I actually love being in recovery. I love lying in bed with bandages. I'm always at my happiest at that time. And then after about 2 months or something, that, you know, great feeling of, wow, I love my new face kind of wears off, and then I'm always thinking about the next thing.
What's so bizarre too is that this episode of Dr. Phil doesn't even really dive into the whole transracial stuff. It doesn't go into the details of how Oli Oli identifies as a Korean. It's more about how Oli is obsessed with achieving the look of Jimin and being recognized on the streets as Jimin. This whole episode tries to dive more into the psychological aspects of plastic surgery obsession, which I mean is totally fine. Like, it's Dr. Phil, he's a clinical psychologist. Of course he's gonna talk about like plastic surgery obsession over transracial, which is at this point a terminally online term. Like I said, two things can be true at once. Yes, Oli has a clear obsession with plastic surgery. Anyone who looks at him can obviously tell that that is a thing, and it clearly negatively affects his life, especially how it mentally affects him and how he views himself. As far as Oli London is aware, the original Oli before is essentially dead, and that this version of Oli London, where he's basically a Jimin copy, is the new Oli London that he loves to be, despite the fact that it's not really Oli, it's just a copy of someone else. I mean, there's gotta be something like mentally going on there if Oli London genuinely thinks that being anyone but himself is more desirable than just loving who he is. But despite Dr. Phil trying to take Oli London seriously, he also does this and proposed to Jimin live on Dr. Phil. Pause the video. Oh, don't worry, your video is working just as it should. I just decided to pause it for a second to show you this. You see all that? See this? This is fucking stupid. Now, you're probably wondering, dear viewer, Lacey, how come you're getting so many copyright claims and not making any money off of your videos? That's a good question, viewer. I have no fucking idea. Despite all of my content falling under fair use, YouTube doesn't believe in fair use. So despite the fact that I literally fight against all of these copyright claims, YouTube decided to not side with the creators and fuck me over anyways. Thanks, YouTube. So keeping all that in mind, Dr. Phil is not gonna let me use a lick of his fucking content. I mean, I'm risking it a little bit with the Ty Beeson clip, but the only reason I think I can get away with it is because I like distorted it for the funnies. So it kind of falls under like fair use by transforming the content enough. So maybe it might slip under the copyright system. I don't know, we'll see. But something as recent as like 3 years ago, I don't think it's gonna fucking cut it. So as much as I would love to show you this clip of Oli London on the Dr. Phil show proposing to Jimin because it is a funny meme, I don't think I'm gonna be able to show it because Dr. Phil will copyright this video into oblivion. So instead, by the advice of my legal staff and my creative team, we decided to create a dramatic reenactment of this very scene using advanced technologies like CGI and Photoshop. Please enjoy this dramatic reenactment.
Today on Dr. Phil.
You need serious help. Serious help.
Dr. Phil is given his most confusing assignment yet.
朋友是一个坚韧不拔的纪录片。
Can Dr. Phil bring some sense to this Korean weeb wannabe? Or will it be back to the North Korean camps for Oli London? Find out right now on Dr. Phil.
I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. What do you think Jimin would say to you if he had ever met you in real life? I mean, have you ever considered what would happen if, say, he ever actually acknowledged you at all? OMG, yes, Dr. Phil, I have thought about this forever. If Jimin was literally standing in front of me right now, I would literally get down on one knee right now. I would do it like this, like do it at dick level. And then I would literally say, Jimin, will you please marry me? You're so kawaii. That's literally how I would do it, Dr. Phil. I would do it right here, right now.
That's true.
I don't really know what to say to that. Honestly, I feel a lot of homoerotic tension between you and me right now. OMG, Dr. Phil, stop. I'm only for Jimin. And I kind of want you to do that to me right now. That's not what happened on the episode. I kind of want you to meet me at eye level to dick level like you just did right there. Yeah, okay, thanks, bye. Like, I feel like Dr. Phil and Oli's friends are bringing up very valid concerns with his obsession with plastic surgery, and how that muddies how he views himself and how he identifies, especially since it sounds like he's getting these surgeries back to back, which is incredibly dangerous. Like, I'm not saying that they're not bringing up valid points about his health. What I am saying is that I think Oli is more concerned with keeping up this bit, this troll, this idea that he's so in love with Jimin that he wants to be him, that he's willing to completely permanently alter his look to a point that it sounds like he's putting his life at risk. As far as Oli is concerned, his real life really doesn't matter as long as he's keeping up with the joke of him being obsessed with Jimin. Despite the fact that Frenchie would go on to say, like, 3 years after this episode, that Oli doesn't even listen to K-pop, and that his crush on Jimin is just a large troll. This episode of Dr. Phil is disappointing for many reasons, but the biggest one is that its two priorities are clashing against each other without focusing on the main issue at hand. Like, Oli's more concerned with keeping up with the obsessed fanboy troll, while Frenchie and Dr. Phil want to look at the more psychological aspects of plastic surgery obsession. And of course, I'm just sitting here watching, and I know what I know about Oli London, and I'm just wondering, like, why the fuck is no one pointing out how racist this guy is? Like, you know, internet troll or not, I cannot emphasize this enough. He is literally basing this whole thing off of BTS. That's it. He doesn't know anything about Korea other than BTS. It is a character of a whole race of people. It is embarrassing. But regardless, I think that we've discussed enough about Oli's character as a troll. If his music is anything to go off of, it's clearly just a way to emphasize this character of basically being a Jimin clone. But moving forward from Jimin to Rosé, when Oli decided to transition into a woman, the question now becomes, is that aspect part of his trolling, or is that him being genuine? Like, is he genuinely trying to transition, or is he trying to troll another community? And I think the answer to that is kind of a mixed bag. Again, I think it's one of those things where two things can be true at once. But I think the part where the trolling comes in is where he wants to base his look off of yet again another person. Like, instead of transitioning into his own woman, he has to copy off of someone else and being the obsessive fan again. Oli London's whole troll, his whole joke is basically never fully being himself at any point at any time ever. It's always to copy off of someone else. Hell, even if we move forward to Oli's detransition when he becomes a crazy conservative, even at that point he's still not really being himself. Even then, most of his new beliefs about gender and identity comes from things that he just copies off from Fox News or the Daily Wire or something. Like, Oli London has never been original in his whole fucking career as an influencer. He's always been a mockery of something else. And I think that's the point. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery is an Oscar Wilde quote that I think has lost a lot of meaning over the years. Because people straight up just use it as a justification for impersonating other people. When in reality, what Oscar was trying to say was that people are going to be inspired by what you put out there. And it goes far beyond what you make or what you do for other people, but especially who you are as a person. And people are gonna wanna incorporate some of those aspects of how you live your life because they view that as an especially valuable quality that you possess that they want to model. This whole phrase, this whole saying is more of an expression of valuing those who inspire you. And Oli London isn't inspired by Jimin or Rosé or Donald Trump or whoever the fuck is on Fox News. He just wants to be them, like, not emulate them, not be inspired by them, just be those people. Oli London just has such a terrible worldview of how he views himself that he can't imagine himself being anyone else other than other people. And this quote isn't saying to completely abandon what makes you yourself and just replace everything about you just to copy off of other people, but to find inspiration in your peers that you value as good aspects. Because ultimately, imitation is flattering, but it can also come across as incredibly creepy and disturbing. So, political pundits like Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan have been running this whole Oli London thing into the ground. They are relying on Oli's story to push for a larger agenda against marginalized communities that have never actually accepted Oli London in the first place. Like, trans communities and K-pop and the Korean community have essentially blacklisted Oli London and have been calling what he's been doing incredibly offensive and problematic for years. And in retaliation, Oli is now deciding to turn the tables on them and say that they shouldn't have access to their gender-affirming healthcare because of what they pushed him into doing, even though, again, the trans community that he's been blaming for this have been calling him a racist troll. Now, I guess the good news that is somewhat comforting in all this, is the fact that the transphobic agenda that Tucker and Pierce have been pushing is so desperate for a negative example of self-expression that they are relying on the internet troll with a history of being incredibly offensive and racist. And literally people from all walks of life, from all over the political spectrum, have been saying that this is racist and hurtful towards trans and Korean people. And it truly shows how little of research that these people are willing to do when they rely on the most hated man in K-pop to push their anti-trans narratives. When trans people have already drawn that line in the sand there and saying that this ain't it, she. The freedom of self-expression is incredibly important, and you should feel free to express yourself and your identity however you feel fit, as long as you're not hurting anyone. Transgender doesn't hurt people, but transracial does. Breaking down social conventions that we make up isn't the same thing as making a mockery of a culture that has existed and evolved over thousands of years. So it appears that Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan are literally scraping the bottom of the barrel for anti-trans content, that they rely on someone who has clearly been playing the troll game for many years. So at least that takes some hit to their credibility, as they are this desperate that they will literally rely on an internet troll. But then again, it's not like this desperation makes them look any less stupid. It actually makes Oli way more fucking dangerous. If the trolling has taught us anything, it's that Oli London is more than willing to copy off of anything and anyone for attention, to avoid being his true self. And so what he has effectively done now is give right-wing talking heads a Play-Doh mold to shape into whatever narrative they want Oli to be in that moment. If you want to talk about puppeteering, then just look at what Oli London has been saying recently. It is bizarre. This assertion that his transracial identities comes from the trans community pushing this idea of changing your race is not founded in reality, like, at all. To suggest so is to assert the idea that an entire community is accepting of bastardizing a culture for the sake of self-expression, which is just not true. This isn't even the first time cisgender trolls and grifters have tried to push their narratives and ideas into the trans community to just be accepted by them, only for it to be rejected in mass by the transgender community and the LGBTQ, because believe it or not, those people actually do have standards. For example, Stefankny Walsh, who was a father of 7 kids, realized that they were trans at the age of 46. Now, this would be fine if they didn't then blend their transgender identity with their age play kink into what Stefankny refers to as trans age. Stefankny identifies as a 6-year-old, and when they try to find acceptance in the trans community with their child persona, they wrote him off completely. But Stefankny has tried for many years to validate their identity in the LGBTQ and attach their fetish as an acceptable identity. When it comes to Stefankny, I think what a lot of people tend to forget is that age regression therapy is a type of treatment for those who have suffered with a lot of traumatic experiences in their childhood that then proceeds untreated in their adulthood. And maybe age regression therapy helps this person accept that they're transgender because maybe they were abused as a child for wanting to be a girl, and that their healing method and coping is reverting back into a childlike state where they feel the most safe, i.e. reverting back to a time before the trauma or rewriting their past in the present so that they can relive that childhood they wish they had.
I just use it as play therapy, and it helps me cope with depression and anxiety. If you found this video informative, please subscribe below, and we will show you what transphobia and what trans support look like. Become a trans ally.
And I'm not saying that this is definitely what's going on because I'm not a therapist. I can't, diagnose anything or can't, say that this is the treatment that they're going with. I'm just pointing out that the possibility exists. But honestly, this could be a whole separate video for another day. The main point that I'm trying to get at here is if you think that all of these different things are accepted in the trans community, you should probably talk to a real trans person or someone who is actually a part of the community, and they'll tell you what exactly is and isn't accepted in their community. And you'll actually learn that most of the shit that most of the internet thinks that they just accept as part of their community isn't necessarily accepted in their community. Like, even they think that this is a mockery of what being trans actually is. Remember when pedophiles were trying to gain acceptance in the LGBTQ community as a legit sexuality, and yet the entire community said, no, this is not acceptable, fuck that. It's the same thing with people in the trans community not accepting things like trans age, or transracial, or trans disabled. It's literally the same shit. And yet, it doesn't really matter to right-wing pundits who talk on Fox News. They just think that the trans community is accepting of literally every crazy new trans identity that exists. When if you actually speak to anyone who is actually part of the community, you'll realize that they don't believe in this shit either. The only reason that this association is constantly being made is because of these two factors. Cisgender people trying to assert themselves in a community that they don't belong into, failing to fit in, and then getting pissed when they can't convince the trans community to accept their crazy identity, despite the fact that their identity makes absolutely no fucking sense. And two, other transgender people like Blair White, who tries to convince you that the trans community just accepts all these crazy identities. But Blair has always made the distinction that she is not actually a part of the mainstream transgender community, and constantly distances herself from being a part of the community. And when she distances herself like this, she then refuses to actually speak to the community when it comes to alternative identities like this, which then makes her just assume that all trans people accept these crazy identities when they don't. Like, can we be real here for a second? How the fuck is Blair White supposed to know that the trans community that she has openly distanced herself from accepts all these crazy identities when she doesn't fucking talk to the community? Like, honestly, are we really going to be listening to the transracial guy who detransitioned from being a Korean to talk about the trans community openly and honestly? Like, are we for real? Like, think critically for a second. Like, please? Do you honestly believe that Oli London is gonna know anything about being trans when his trans identity was based up upon another fucking person? Like, people, please use some common fucking sense for just a second. Like, for once in your fucking lives, can you please not rely on anti-SJWs to determine what trans people actually think about all these crazy identities? Ask a real fucking trans person. For fuck's sakes, the community has been talking about this for literal years now. But nah, nobody wants to actually listen to the trans person. They would rather listen to the anti-SJW who claims to know more about trans identities than the actual fucking community. Are you serious? And look, I'm not saying that I'm completely in the clear here, right? Because, you know, I used to be an anti-SJW, I know. And when it comes to being an anti-SJW, it comes with not actually listening to the people in the community, but listening to the people who think they know better than the community that they're speaking for. And that, honestly, is a huge fuck-up on my part. That I never listened to the community and assumed that only cisgender men and women who were anti-politically correct and were all free speech without any consequences. Apparently those people knew better than actual trans people about their own community. But when I actually asked these people, I realized that they don't believe in this shit either and have been accused of believing it for so many years. They have clearly drawn a line in the sand with transabled, transracial, trans age, pedophiles, and zoophiles being actual sexualities. Like, all of that is rejected by the mainstream transgender community. It's just that right-wing political pundits likes to push this idea that they believe in all these crazy genders and all these crazy sexualities when they don't. They just don't. And look, I'm not saying that this is like all of them. I'm sure there's like a small percentage of the community that actually does. But if we're gonna be talking about like transgender acceptance as a whole, this is not it. And the reason why they disregard these things is the same reason why everyone else does. Because, number one, it's incredibly offensive for a person of a non-marginalized community to suddenly want to identify as a marginalized community. Just because. And two, because it's batshit fucking crazy. Challenging the gender norms that have been socially constructed over many years that is based on what we know as biological sex is not as offensive as literally pretending to be another fucking race. Or better yet, another fucking person. Like, the concept of race as we know it today was actually codified by the Spaniards to divide Jewish people from Hispanics, which was then adopted by Europeans when colonizing Africa. By the way, look it up. Look up racism in Spain. Fucking wild. But like, ethnicity is still concrete. Like, humans made up the concept of race, but we're still all born in other places in the world geographically with different practices and cultures. Like, that's still very real. But that doesn't mean that we can just change that at will like Oli London can. Oli London's grift is trying to attribute his actions to a community that he was rejected from out of spite. But the actual grift I feel that Oli isn't really self-aware of is that he can just stop being Korean whenever it's inconvenient. And that is so fucked up. Like, he's been so dedicated to the bit, and when he gets rejected from everyone and called out for racism and cultural appropriation, he just goes full fucking transphobe. Like, why? And although people like Tucker Carlson will tell you that this is a legit cause of the slippery slope, if you will, for accepting the trans community, that doesn't mean it's true. Because the example he is using is a fraud.
Well, this is the end. Overall, pretty anticlimactic, I'm not gonna lie. Whoever decided to give me a camera and a microphone to literally rant about online personalities for 2 fucking hours, that was a massive mistake. I mean, it's fine because, like, these videos that are literally just, like, Avatar levels of length, with all of this over-editing, is just to compensate for the fact that I literally don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I'm not a YouTube mastermind, okay? I'm recording this outro in my bed, 1, because I'm tired, and 2, because I forgot. This video has taken me 2 weeks to make, and I don't know if you guys can tell. Listening to myself for hours on end, editing 20 to 30 minute segments, and just listening to myself talk, it's like I can understand why I have haters now, right? Like, I can't even stand the sound of my own voice. I fucking hate editing myself sometimes. I don't know if you guys want a takeaway from this video. I don't know if you guys want a grand life lesson, but I'm not trying to change minds here. I'm just here to rant about a stupid person online. But if you really do want some inspirational quote, just be yourself or something. Also, don't be racist. That too. This video, honestly, should not be 2 hours long, but at the same time, I am not to blame, at least not entirely, because I have a massive audience that keeps enabling this terrible behavior, because you guys are still watching now. You guys are still here. I can see you. But hey, if you want to continue enabling my terrible behavior to get more content like this, you should support me on Patreon. You see what I did there? But honestly, if you guys really want to know, like, the best way that you can support me right now, you can support another one of my passions, which is art. I have commissions open. This is a commission form. This is just a tad bit of my portfolio. I'll post it right on the screen now. But if you guys want, like, an extended portfolio to see, like, what I'm capable of, you can also follow me on my art TikTok and my art Instagram account. Clearly, I have too many social media accounts. It's a lot to follow, I know. February is looking out to be a pretty interesting month, all things considered. So I'm excited, and I hope you guys are excited too. Anyways, I'm gonna go to bed. So, thanks for watching. Support my brother SAMIS. Thank you for being a part of this video. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.